Hi there, I'm Robin Shuckbrough, your Cotswold explorer. Today we're in the great surroundings of the West Ox Arts Gallery in Bampton in West Oxfordshire. And with me I have the leader of the longest established open studio event in the country, the standard bearer of all similar events around the nation, and still by a country mile the most successful, Oxfordshire Artweeks. We're going to find out a little bit about her, a lot about Artweeks itself, and how, or indeed if, she's managed to hold this amazing event together over the terrible years of 2021. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Oxfordshire Artweeks Festival Director, Esther Lafferty. Esther, welcome. I'm going to start, if I may, a little explanation about what Artweek is. I mean, it's been going, I think, since the 1980s, is that right? And if my memory serves me right, we arrived in Oxford in about 85, and I think we started taking part in it. I think it was probably, this is my wife, as many of our viewers already know, is a painter, and in about, I think about 85 or 6.
Yes, next year is Artweeks' 40th anniversary,
right.
So it must have...
Okay, so it was 82 or 3.
I think it's next year, so yes.
Well, and it was started who by, was it locals or?
Yes, it was a group of local artists in Oxford around a kitchen table. It's an idea that somebody had seen in the States, so it's an idea shipped in from the States. And just the idea that people open their homes, they open their studios, and they invite locals, the general public in.
Yeah.
So Artweeks, Oxfordshire Artweeks was the first open studios event in the UK. And it's now an idea that's spread all over the UK, right, and actually all over the world, really.
Yes, I did wonder whether, I mean, I've certainly seen it elsewhere, and I've seen it in Italy, and I've in one or two other places of this kind. It did start entirely as a way of inviting people into the studios. And it isn't quite that anymore.
No. I think all sorts of changing circumstances, just from whether it's house prices or people have found different ways to take part. So we now would say we were open studios and pop-up exhibitions.
Yes, okay. That makes a bit more sense, and then some groups work together and so forth. How many people are taking part? Is it?
This year is slightly smaller, right, but in a normal year we have 1,000 members who are exhibiting, and on top of that there are probably another 1,000 people who are involved in one way or another because they're part of a community group, so they're not selling their work, but there might be a photography group, or charities often have a lot of members who all submit one piece, or schools. So we probably have up to 2,000 people taking part in a normal year.
It's huge. So I mean, for the artists, I'm assuming that for many of them anyway, this is because it's a non-selective business.
It is. We're an inclusive festival. Exactly. We include, so we have established artists, and about a third of our professional artists became established by using the Artweeks mechanism, which is brilliant for people to dip their toe in the water. Yeah. So we have the established artists, but we also have emerging artists. And it might be the very first time they've shown their work. Their friends and their family have said, it's brilliant, you should sell it, but they don't quite believe it. And one of my favourite stories is a chap who, in fact, it's his 21st year this year, so he's opening his studio near Burford this year, a sculptor, but it was his sister who submitted his entry the very first time, because he was, I can't possibly.
Really?
And she submitted it, and then once he was in that festival guide, he had to show his work, and people loved it. So we are very inclusive. And again, we think that's great, because it does mean that children or people just can have a go and show their work and see what people think of it.
So do I. I mean, I think it's the most wonderful thing. And in fact, I can imagine that there are dozens of artists who would never have shown their stuff otherwise. But it also means that they begin to rely on it to sell things. It puts a slight added responsibility onto the Artweeks. I know it's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And is the online thing working quite well from that point of view? Are the sales holding up reasonably?
It's hard for me to answer that spot on, because we aren't a selling site. No. So we are a I suppose we are a promotional site for all of the artists, but what we are doing as an organisation is saying, here is wonderful art to look at, and here are the contact details of the artists. So while we do get a certain amount of feedback, we don't have spot-on statistics of what's sold. Now, in a normal year, in real venues, we estimate that about £1 million worth of art changes hands across Oxfordshire, which is a huge amount of money.
That takes my breath away.
I know, it's staggering really, but online it won't have been anything like that. Partly because lots of the artists weren't able to step up to the challenge. They just had other challenges of their own at home, whether it was homeschooling or shopping for relatives or whatever it was, or they worked in the NHS in their day job. So the number of artists was reduced, but the people who really bought into the virtual idea, many of them did quite well. It was also, though, about making new contacts and spreading their networks. Yes. And that was great.
It does that enormously, and it's one of the things that interests us so much, is that, you know, what is great fun is to be able to tell people from all over the world that this is going on. Because it is, in my view, a really good example of the sort of way in which communities can work together. And this terrible year we've had is on the verge of destroying so much of what is sort of, you know, fundamental to our lives in the way of arts of all kinds. That it's rather wonderful that this one is able to continue.
Yes. Well, last year we were, well, lucky for us, possibly not for everybody who'd hoped to be involved in, that we have a kind of very annual cycle. So artists pay to be part of the organisation. Right. And they had already paid for their 2020 membership and exhibitions. So we had that money. We knew that we couldn't return it because we would have been tens of thousands of pounds in the red. And our artists understood that, because we don't get any funding from anywhere else. We are self-funded as an organisation. We're proud to be self-funded because it means that we can do what suits the artists, and we're not having to be driven by, we must get this grant for doing this and that. So last year we were all right, but this year we were worried whether, if things had a real impact on people signing up to be involved this year, how that would affect us. And there was some fairly kind of intakes of breath, deep intakes of breath at the end of the year and the beginning of this year, when it was in the balance for only a short time, but we just didn't quite know whether we would have enough support from the artist community to be able to carry forward into this year. But fortunately, we've been going so long, and the artists do so value what we add to to their trading, but to their lives, to their focus, all sorts of things, and the support we give them, that most people, or 2/3 certainly, were able. We said to people, if you can afford to take the punt this year, please do, and 2/3 of people did.
Well, Esther, thank you so much for that. It was exactly what I was hoping, and fascinating conversation. To look at this unparalleled exhibition, whether it turns out to be online or otherwise, visit our website. Most of you know what that is, www.thecotswoldexplorer.co.uk, and you'll find a clear link under the Oxfordshire Artweeks logo, which will take you directly there. Give them support, people. I know everyone's had a lousy year, but the arts in general have suffered terribly, and we really must try to assure the future of those things which, in my view, help to define our civilization, the creative arts. We'll see you very soon. Goodbye.